Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretschmer, speaking with Ryan Neiswinder, a Paralympic basketball player from a wheelchair. As we resume our conversation today on the second of two parts, Ryan is talking to us about the nature of his disability, which is not something that will get worse as he goes along.
So it is not progressive. What I have is what I have, and it's not going to get better and it's not going to get worse. Now, I don't have a whole lot of muscles in my legs, and they will atrophy just because when you don't work something out, it's kind of a use it or lose it mentality.
Yeah.
My quadriceps and maybe the size of them or the size of what the muscle would have been, it continues to atrophy. But in terms of quality of life, everyday living, impact, what I have is what I have. It doesn't affect my upper body. My quality of life is great, and that is a huge blessing. A hidden blessing is that it is not progressive and it's not going to get worse over time.
When did you first become interested in basketball and saying, hey, I'd like to try that out and see what I can do with it?
When I was 8 years old, my parents took me to an event in Philadelphia, and I'm originally from Hershey, Pennsylvania, and they took me to an event in Philadelphia where it was kind of, you could hop in a chair, you could try it out, and we had never heard of wheelchair basketball. Up until that point, I had been playing t-ball with my friends and being a goalkeeper in soccer and just trying to make it work in the avenues of sport that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to this, and the first time I hopped in a chair, it was like the first time in my life I went from being the slowest person on the soccer field or the baseball field to the fastest person on the floor.
That must have been a trip, so to speak.
I know. Yeah, it was freedom. It was finally there was a level playing field, and what I recognized too is that there was a lot of there's a lot of area to improve, and it's a craft just like anything else. The way you use a golf club to swing is the way that I use a wheelchair to play basketball. It's the equipment that we use, and so it excited me, the freedom that I had, but also the ability to practice something and have a passion. So many people never grow up their entire lives and never figure out a passion that they love to do. And I was fortunate enough to get that at the age of 8.
Wow. Yeah. I imagine as you're saying that it must be relatively dull for a person who does not have something in their life that sets them on fire. And you've got basketball and you've got the Lord. So I guess we could say you're twice blessed in that regard, and maybe even triple blessed in the sense that not only do you have Christ, but you also share Christ, and that is a super thing in itself as well.
Yeah, it is a blessing to have passions, and passions kind of they give you a purpose, and I think we're called to live a purpose-driven life. I think that we each have been given gifts and abilities that we can use to give God glory, but it wasn't always the case. I grew up in a Christian home, but never really accepted Christ for myself. And in sports, I think we can all see, and this is life, but if you put your worth and your identity into the things of this world, you'll ride the roller coasters of emotions, of highs and lows, and what people say, and the wins and the losses, and the great performances. And it wasn't until I got to college and I got around other athletes who loved Jesus that it really clicked for me. The gospel was shared. I saw how the two could come together and work together for His glory, and that was a pretty special moment in college.
Now, as far as your schoolwork was concerned in college, what were you majoring in while you were on campus or in that experience?
At the University of Illinois, I majored in kinesiology, and I got a teaching certification in physical education as well. I just enjoy learning about the human anatomy and the human body, and especially being an athlete, when you understand how it moves, functions, works, and how you can maximize its potential, it not only is cool to learn about, but then to implement to make you a better athlete is pretty extraordinary as well. And so I really enjoyed that during my time at the University of Illinois. I got my undergrad in that, and then I just graduated last week with my master's in business administration.
Oh, wow. Yeah, very impressive, sir. Very impressive. They have professional wheelchair basketball teams in Germany?
Yeah, Europe has a huge scene, and they have really figured out how to draw a fan base, create a market. They have professional leagues in Germany, Spain, Italy, France, and Turkey.
But not yet here in the United States?
We have what is called the NWBA, the National Wheelchair Basketball Association, and that is how I got involved in sports in the high school and what I continue to play into today. It's the national governing body for our sport, international, or for Team USA as well. But we have not found a market to pay athletes yet. It is more recreational. People have jobs, and then you might go to a tournament on a weekend every now and then, but you cannot make a full-time living in the United States.
Yeah, there are some sports like soccer in the past. I remember being out in eastern South Dakota in the 1970s, and the North American Soccer League was launched, and it ran for several years, and then it folded. And in Hartford, Connecticut, near where I'm located right now while we speak, they have a soccer team that is, I think they call it Division II. In the hierarchy of soccer teams. But again, when we think of football, what the rest of the world thinks of as football, we call soccer, and what we call football, they call American football, to differentiate from the real football that the World Cups for and things like that are concerned. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about overseas is they've found a really unique model where, for instance, in Philadelphia, you have the Sixers, you have the Phillies, you have the Eagles, you have the Flyers, and so on. But they're all separate entities. Whereas when I was in Hamburg, Germany, playing for HSV, they have a soccer it's a club, and they have a soccer team. They have a basketball team. They have different sports, and we fell in that club. And what's unique about that is we still drove in revenue. Mm-hmm. But we were also able to draw from other people's revenue. Like we weren't just dependent on our sport. And the other unique part is the European countries are definitely smaller, which allows for travel to be less expensive.
Yes.
The United States poses a lot of challenges, and the unique part is we dominate the sport. So if we could figure out a way to make it happen in the States, the best players in the world would probably be coming home.
It sounds like the model they use in Europe is a little bit like what the NCAA does for sports, which is you've got your football, your basketball, which are both very big, and then a campus like the University of Connecticut, for instance, can have several other sports, and the revenue gets shared around, so to speak, so that the sports that do not draw as much revenue are not dependent upon the revenue they themselves can generate, because there is more money coming from other sports, as I mentioned, that do draw more revenue, and then the athletic department allocates it presumably in the best way possible, so that everyone who's involved in sports on that basis is benefited from. Maybe professionally, if it were possible to do it that way over here, maybe that would be an answer. But the history of professional sports being what it is, I suppose it's kind of difficult to contemplate owners being willing to throw together like that, like apparently they do over there as a club.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is the unique part about overseas is, and just wheelchair basketball, a lot of people enjoy watching it. They just don't get the opportunity to do that here.
Yeah.
And most people have never seen it. It's not televised. The market is just starting to grow. Toyota just sponsored Team USA and some of the athletes, and different big-time corporations are starting to get on board.
A true pleasure speaking with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been the second of 2 days of conversation with Ryan Neiswinder, a Paralympic athlete, basketball player from his wheelchair, talking about the 2021 Games in Japan. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of the station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from WIHS, Middletown.